So we are recording. Once we're done, Lucy will try to upload the meeting as soon as she can, probably early next week. Welcome. It seems like it's been a short amount of time since the last meeting, which it probably has, but I think we got a real good agenda for today. We got a busy meeting. We're going to hear from Doug Burton from unemployment. He's going to go over some unemployment items that we're talking about. Commissioner Pender-Macon will be with us from 10 to 10:30 to give us an address as the Commissioner of Education. And then we'll take a short little break, and then we'll get into an Esea update. I know Cheryl Lang will be here. I believe that Christy Osier may not be, but Cheryl is bringing someone else from the Esea department to talk about Esea and the new billing system and some updates there. And then we have Representative Bruce White from House District 109, who will talk about how bills become laws. So I think we got a packed agenda for today. I thank you all for coming. If you could in the chat, just introduce yourselves virtually as to who you are, what school district you're from, what areas your school district serves. Folks can kind of get an opportunity to see who everyone is and where they're from, and what schools are represented. I think it's helpful that when folks are looking to collaborate, find someone to network with, it's a great opportunity for folks to be able to know where folks are from. As I'm speaking, Lucy's going to be letting folks in at the same time. And Doug will be with us a little bit around 9:20 today. So welcome, everybody. I'm Colin Walsh. I'm president, and I'm from RSU 57, which serves the Waterboro area down in southern Maine. So I want to start out, we're going through introductions. I just want to go through a couple of things with the group. From time to time, we get concerns, issues, complaints brought to either me or the executive committee. I want to let folks know how we approach that. Anything that comes forward either to me, I forward to the executive committee, and the executive committee then meets and discusses concerns, issues that members have from a membership standpoint. That's been our process. If we feel that it's something that the membership needs to be involved and know about, then we certainly bring it, or we make sure it is clarified or brought out during a meeting. So there's some things I'm going to talk about this morning, which will hopefully clarify some things for folks and also bring some light to a few other things. So one of the things that we've talked about a lot and folks have talked about is where are we at with an executive director position. The executive committee has been working with Drummond Woodsum and Chris Stevenson specifically on getting a 501c3 status for our organization. That is in the works. We do have draft documents that we're in the process of reviewing as an executive committee and consulting with Chris on what the next steps are, what that involves, and what is involved in the membership aspect of that. And I don't have specific answers to those at this point, but I can tell you that is in process. Simultaneous with that, there's certain members of the executive committee who are working on trying to draft documents for how do we interview, how do we advertise, what's the job description look like, what are the specifics of that position. Right now, the goal is that that's a part-time position. That's how we've talked about it for a while now. And I think that that is certainly a needed step for the organization. We've talked about it at other meetings. It certainly will come up again. But I just wanted to provide an update for that because maybe that hasn't been clearly identified to folks. But I think that's an important aspect. That's a sequential step. There are certain things we need to do before that position can be advertised and hired. Do I see that as short-term? Does the executive committee see that as an important task? Absolutely. And we're moving as diligently as we can to accomplish that. But it does take time and it does have to go in a certain order. And the first order is that we need to get some legal things taken care of before we can do that. The other part that I want to address as part and parcel of that is I've had some folks approach about me as president. I have made no qualms about the fact that this, for all intents and purposes, is my last year as president. I don't intend to continue. It's been a long time. I do think the organization needs a different president. I don't think it's good that someone serves for an extended period of time. I think there were some circumstances that have brought this to the front to where it is today. But I think for me, I think for the organization, I've said this to folks, I've said it at meetings before. I have other things I want to do. There's other things I want to do within the organization. That is not the executive director. Don't infer anything from that. That is absolutely not. But there are other volunteer things I want to do with the organization. I also want to let you know that everyone on this organization is a volunteer. We do this in addition to our own jobs, just like you do. And we're doing the best we can. We certainly welcome your feedback. We certainly want to hear your feedback. We're here to help serve you in all of you. But it is important to also recognize that we all do other jobs just like everyone on the screen does. That's one of the reasons. There are many others that the executive director position is so important. We feel as a committee, and hopefully you feel as an organization. I do want to talk a little bit about also what we as an executive committee do with education and professional development. Our PD certification committee has been struggling. It's been struggling for several years. That doesn't mean that we're not doing professional development and other things and that we're not building relationships and networks with others. We've done a lot with Joanne. We've done a lot with Tyler at DOE. A lot of those sessions, a lot of things, there's a lot of communication back and forth to try to build that relationship. Deb Roberts is on the screen. I know Steve as well. We meet pretty regularly. I wouldn't say every month, but we meet very frequently during the year to talk about what are things that we as business managers need and make sure we're syncing what we're doing with what others are doing, whether it's DOE, whether it's MSMA, whether it's Drummond. And now we're also trying to start networking and building a relationship with MADSEP. So behind the scenes, whether that is at the forefront or not, I want you as the membership to know that there's a lot of that that's going on behind the scenes with the executive committee and members of the executive committee to build and forge those relationships for our membership. I think that's important to know. Can we do better? No disagreement. I think we can. But I think a large part of that is I feel that as an executive committee, we're doing the best we can with the time and effort we have to help represent the membership. Hopefully you feel that same way. If you don't feel that same way, reach out to an executive committee member or the entire group. Let us know. I think we try our very, very best in everything we do to keep the whole membership as a whole in our thoughts, in ideas, in our planning, in what we do. We don't always agree as an executive committee. We have discussions. We reach common ground. I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that we each come from different perspectives, different schools, different backgrounds, provide a different perspective that represents all of the membership. So I just wanted to talk a little bit this morning about that, because at the last meeting, we had a lot of business items that we went through. But this morning I wanted to provide just 5 minutes of a little more of an update about what we as an executive committee, me as president, are doing. I don't think that for a minute that there aren't things we could be doing more of or doing better. There are. But hopefully you as a membership overall feel that we're going in the direction that you want us to go. If we are, please let us know. If you don't think we are, please let us know. But I think it's critical that we really try to provide, like today, real meaningful seminars, sessions, and education to help promote business managers. I mentioned at a previous meeting that Lucy and Andrea are representing MeASBO in meetings with the commissioners group. The commissioner has a group of folks who meet. If you weren't at previous meetings or didn't hear the recording, we talked about that. That's a huge step for business managers. That's a seat at the table with other leadership in education throughout the state that provides huge input to be able to help guide where the Department of Education is going. That's the first time that I know of that MeASBO or representatives of MeASBO have been asked to participate in that round table, in those meetings with the commissioner and the commissioner's leadership team. I think that's huge. I think that's great for us as business managers. Hopefully that gives you some flavor in a short period of time of what we are doing, what is occurring, and how important we feel the overall organization and all of the membership that we represent and how important that is. That's my report for this morning. Certainly happy to answer questions on any of that, if anyone has any, but I think that's an important part, and hopefully I've communicated a lot of what we are doing and a lot of what you may not see going on and wonder, well, Tyler gets to conduct his own meetings, but we do talk frequently and we say, hey, what about this area or what about that area? Same with MSMA. There is a real connection there with other organizations to help really guide the leadership of school finance in Maine and school business officials. I would look next for an approval of the minutes of the October 8th meeting. If someone would unmute and make a motion.
So moved. Second.
So Don Pooler motioned, Sherry Proctor second. Is there any discussion about the minutes? If so, unmute yourself and if there's no discussion about the minutes, if I can do this right, because I think it's in my court, I'm going to launch a poll to approve the minutes of October 8th. Let me see if I did this right. I think I did it. At least it looks like I did.
Do folks have the poll? Colin and I can't see it because I'm a co-host.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to let folks it looks like everyone who's participated is going to end the poll, and I will share the results. So hopefully, can everyone see the results at this point? So the minutes are approved at 92%, 0 against, and 8% abstaining. Thank you. Next is approval of the treasurer's report. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved. Mark?
Thank you, Mark. Mark Bouchard made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Lucy. Lucy has seconded. Is there any discussion about the treasurer's report? If so, unmute yourself so we can hear the discussion. Hearing no discussion, I'll try to see if I can do this twice in a row. And go to the next one. And you should see approval of treasurer's report now. It looks like everyone has kind of subsided in the voting. I'll end the poll and share the results. 92% have approved treasurer's report, 0 against, and 8% are abstaining. So that motion is passed. Next on the agenda is committee reports. Pretty much as part of my report, given the executive committee report, I don't think there's much more. The executive committee does continue to meet regularly. Obviously, a major focus, as I just went over, that we're going through right now is dealing with the 501c3 status, as well as background work on the executive director job title, position, and how that's going to proceed once we get 501c3 status. Next, I'll go to Tri-State. I don't know if Hollis or Diane are here for Tri-State.
Yeah, not much to report. Just the dates of May 25th through the 27th at the Mountain View Grand in Whitefield, New Hampshire. We're working on it. So continue to see more information coming as we progress further. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And obviously from what Diane just reported, they're planning an in-person Tri-State this year. So stay tuned for that. Any questions of Diane in Tri-State? Hearing none, next is technology. Lucy, do you have anything on technology?
No, just if there's other things people want on the website, let us know. I got a few emails this week in the MeASBO Gmail account, which is great. Updates to membership that people are requesting to be done. So if you have any need of that, please email that address and I can get those updated for you. Thank you.
And you're always looking for more help on your committee.
And content for the website.
And content and website stuff. So send that directly to Lucy. Any questions for Lucy? Hearing none, next is legislative. I thought I saw Zach come in. Zach, are you present today?
I am here. Hi,
Awesome.
everyone.
I can't hear you, Zach. We may have some technical difficulties, Zach. So Zach, we're having trouble with you right now. We'll come back to you in just a second. See if we can rectify that. PD, Lucy, do you have anything on PD and certification other than
You
we
said it.
have work to do?
Yeah, I've got to send an email out to the members and just have a schedule up a meeting, and we'd like to get a couple things scheduled this winter. So stay tuned for what we're going to be up to.
Obviously, just like with the other committees, as well as Zach's committee on legislative, always looking for people, folks. So if you have an interest in legislative, technology, or PD and certification, please reach out. Zach, I don't know if we solved your sound issues. I can talk a little bit about the legislative session. I mean, there were a lot of bills carried over, and there were a lot that just went through committee but never got to a vote, or if it did get to a vote, it got tabled. There are some big ones, and that's a large part of, we did work with Drummond over the summer and fall for them to do some work. I know we've done at our last meeting some work with Campbell on a few, so that he presented. I know MSMA, I know Deb, you're here. You guys have done a lot as well with legislative. There's a lot. So that is an area we certainly could use more help in as far as a committee in order to help make sure that we have representation. Part of what we felt was important in doing the agenda and planning training was to have a representative come and talk about how bills become laws and how does that happen and what happens. And I'm sure we'll hear from Vicky during the year from MSMA at some point, and she'll also provide some feedback on that. And we're spending some time on that because a lot of these bills change things dramatically in how we do our jobs and how schools function. Strike law will come up again. I'm sure a potential legislative on, the school board's ability to still have educational policy be under their control is going to come up again. So there are a lot of things that are going to be on the table. So keep that in mind. Lastly, other association business. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up before we get into our educational part of the meeting today? Hearing none.
There is a question in the chat, Colin.
Okay, can you give it to me, Diane?
Maybe. Is there a legislative update on exempting CBA staff from the earned paid leave law?
I have not heard that yet. I know there's been talk about it. I know that we have been talking with legal a lot. I know we've talked with MSMA a little bit about earned paid leave. I know we've really presented our position to both sides quite strongly about this. I think a lot of it, and it'll be interesting to hear from Representative White today on how bills become laws, because I think a lot of that really is driven by how do you get it in front of the legislature to change that law, whether it's totally or from a CBA standpoint. I've heard some grumblings of that, but I do not have any more detailed information about it, unless someone else does, which is
Can you hear me
awesome.
now by chance?
Yes, we can, Zach.
Okay, I will find the link again and I will put, I think it's September or August MSBA pamphlet they handed out, and it tells you which bills were passed, but in the back page it also says which bills were carried over. None of those were an EPL related bill, and I also put that in the MeASBO chat because someone asked the same question on there, and I put the link over there, so I'll go grab it and I'll put it in this chat for everyone.
Thank you, Zach. Much appreciated. There's nothing else. Is Doug with us, Lucy?
Yes, he is.
Okay. So we'll get Doug in from MSMA. Doug, I think probably large majority of you know, works for MSMA in their unemployment part. He also does a lot, I believe, with salary analysis and those types of things. So going to ask Doug to give us an update today on what's happening with unemployment, things we need to know, where we've been and where's it going. So
Thank
Doug,
you.
if you're
Thank
on,
you.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
You may not want to do that.
No, I do.
Thanks for the
All
invite,
right.
everybody. This is interesting. This is the first Zoom that I've been on this end of it where I'm supposed to do some talking. This is weird. As you know, I'm used to having you folks in a room with coffee and donuts and Danish and having a little bit of fun for a couple of hours. So we'll do the best we can. One question, Lucy, do I need to hit the share screen button to share my screen?
Yes, and you're all set to be able to do that.
Oh, Lordy, what the? Okay. Couple of things. Some of what I'm going to talk about today, particularly one particular item, will just apply to the folks that belong to the MSMA fund. The rest of it should apply to all of you. I've tried not to be too specific just to the MSMA folks. So hopefully you folks that are on your own or through Maine Municipal will get some good information out of this. As you folks mentioned about legislation, one of the big ones for us that went through is bus drivers and unemployment. The bill actually passed to provide bus drivers unemployment for the summertime, even if they have reasonable assurance. The kicker is, though, it had a $7 million price tag on it. And when it got to appropriations, it didn't come out of appropriations. What does that mean? Does it get held over? I'm not sure, but we'll certainly be in touch with you once we find out. Obviously, the question we have is when the state's $7 million runs out, who's supposed to pay for it? And we know the answer to that if it continues through. So we will ride herd on that as it comes through this spring. And again, Vicki will be the lead. Vicki Wallach from our office will be the lead on that. I want to start out just giving you some startling numbers about what happened with unemployment during the last 16, 18 months. You folks all know it was a fun time. I had a lot more hair when I started doing this and it wasn't quite as gray. But I want to share with you a couple of spreadsheets here. The first one, this, I hope you can see it all. This gives you an idea. These are the unemployment amounts that we had to pay out of just our fund for our schools during that period of time. Normally, in a typical year, we were spending 200 to low 300,000s. So for 2020, we spent 2.5 million. The interesting thing when you look at the numbers is even though the pandemic hit in March, because DOL got swamped so badly, a lot of the bills didn't get processed until August, and that's why that jump is there. Those claims didn't all come in August. That's an accumulation from April, May, June, and July. And I think you folks all saw, especially you, I hate to say it, but you folks that were, paying on your own, I'm sure some of you had to climb out of your chair when you got those bills because there were some pretty big charges. A thing to remember too is that these amounts, the feds are paying 50% of it. So this is just the amount that we had to pay. The feds picked up 50%, and the feds picked up, I believe, the first waiting week. So we got a pretty good discount on that, but we double that up, and you're looking at, $5 million. for our fund that we would have been charged. This next spreadsheet I want to show you, this is kind of startling too. This is DOL's data of how many claims they dealt with during this period of time. And you'll see the normal. This is last year, 700 a week, 600 a week. And all of a sudden, look at the jump. They went from 634 claims one week to 21,000. Who's going to be able to handle that? You know what I mean? Here's why things got bunged up. They weren't ready for that. Nobody was. So in these, as you can see here, 153,000 new claims in roughly 2 months. That's why things got bunged up. And the thing that really killed us is when they decided to just pay the bills. So what happened was checks were going out of DOL before they reviewed the claim. Okay, and that's why our numbers are so high. So once we got this and we started, you know, what we asked our schools, and I think I put it to everybody when I sent this out to all you folks was, you know, make sure to check people over the summertime that got reasonable assurance that shouldn't have been getting paid, and you reported them to the proper person. And we've had a lot of credits come back. We've probably had between 400,000 and 500,000 of credits come back to the schools, to their accounts. However, we're still dealing with them. I actually have two hearings next week dealing with the summer of 2020 for people that filed, and then were eventually found ineligible, and they have an overpayment. I had one lady who's an overpayment of $10,000. She's already got the money. It's been spent. Where are they going to get the 10,000? We've already had to pay out our share. How are we going to get it back? We don't have a way on our end of getting that money back. It's all up to DOL. So those come petering in. I am going to show you something a little bit in a minute of where you can go and check for us to see if stuff if credits have come back in. And that's all part of the Reemploy Me software program that DOL has. We are now back to a normal cycle. My last couple of bills have been in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. The feds are still picking up part of it. For some reason now, the DOL is bunged up on getting the bills out. I should have had September's bill by the middle of October. We still haven't got them. You folks that are doing it on your own, you'll notice that you have not got them yet. I checked with my contact at DOL to see when they might be in, and she said, I got no idea. So we will do the best we can. When they come in, that's when they're going to show up. But I can't give you any idea when those might be in. So those are the startling numbers that we, DOL, you folks, had to deal with. The fraud issue is pretty much petered out. I've probably only had one fraud claim that I have seen in the last month or so, and it was a teacher. In the heyday, it was interesting. Once the crooks find out that the state said start paying, that's when they flooded the system. I get an email from DOL every night regarding a particular claim, if a claim has been submitted. One night I had emails for 500 claims in one night, and roughly 90%, 95% of them were all frauds. So that's when that hit. We took care of them. Thank you very much to all of you and your payroll people who, kept seeing my emails come through and shuddering and dealing with them. But that was the fastest way to get to them. We got them all taken care of as far as I could tell. And we moved on our way. So we got over that tidal wave of mess. So now I'd like to just show you a couple of things under Reemploy Me, areas of, one of the things Andrea had mentioned to me, Andrea Dish from Sat 11, about looking at the correspondence. There's several different places to look for different pieces of correspondence. And I just wanted to walk you through that and then walk you through a couple other things. And then I'm going to spend the rest of the morning talking about the salary data stuff. But here's our your opening screen. Again, please remember if you have to change, if you're in my program, if you're in an MSMA program and you have to change your passwords, make sure please that I get a copy of that password. And the reason is I go in and I make the online payments for you. This is to pay the credit, your contributions to DOL for the claims that have been made. So that's why I need that. Looking for correspondence. Correspondence is on the inquiry tab. So you can either go here. I always go up here. I don't know why, because it's easier for me because I'm silly that way. I'm old school. Drop downs work best for me. And you have two sets that are probably going to be most interesting is the correspondence. This is if they'll send you a notice on different things. So you click on correspondence, view course. What the heck? Why'd I go there? Oh, all right. Give me 2 seconds. I'm sorry. Hello. I think because I hadn't been in for a while, that kicked me out. I apologize for that. Okay, this is a new thing too. You're going to start seeing. I've noticed last week you get this information. You just accept. That's fine. Inquiry correspondence, view correspondence. There we go. Your school's EIN, grab it, bang. And then you have two options. You've got the benefits, actually got three: tax, benefit, and appeals. Let's start with the tax. This is, some of you got emails this week from DOL saying you had a correspondence in your tax folder. This is where you would come to look at that. So I click on here. And if the notice has come out recently, you can put a pretty short window of where to search, okay? So I'm just going to put a week. You can go back to a month. Then I hit search and boom, we've got a couple things here in the tax account. This is one I want to bring your attention to, and I would ask you to have your people check for. What this is, it's a notice from DOL that says you've got a credit sitting on the books and we're going to send a check out. If you get one of these, if you have one of these in this folder, would you please forward it to me or let me know, and then I can go in and grab it. These checks come to us if you're in the MSMA program, they come to us. If you're on their own, they're going to your school. But if they come to us, I want to be able to match it up. And then I'm simply going to take this amount when the check comes in, I'm going to post it to your account, to your reserve account within our system. Because that's money that's already come out. We want to replace it. So that's under tax, under the correspondence tax drop down. The other spot where you may see something is in appeals. And I'm going to make this one a little bit longer because I know I've got one in here for this. So I chose this school unit because I know she's got one. Search. And this tells me that there's a hearing coming up. These notices here, I'll get a paper copy. So I don't need another, but it's good for you to know that it's there and to keep an eye on. I would suggest possibly that you come into this area maybe once or twice a month and just take a quick look. And if it's something weird, you're in my program, give me a yell. If you're in, I don't care where you are, give me a yell. If it's something weird that you understand, I'll be happy to help you. The other area in inquiry that's handy for me is under tax inquiry. And I can look at to see if quarterly payments were brought in. All right. These actually, this one is their checks we've paid out. There's their big check that they had in November. And this here is a credit they got that you saw part of it on the other screen. Some of it has been used up. The other one I want to look at is the tax report. And what this will show you, shows me, is the reports have been put in things that have been entered. Okay, again, it's just information that you can look at that says, okay, here's where we're at. There's my benefit charge that I'm getting. I'm going to get a check on that sometime. So it looks like within a couple of weeks, we'll get a check here. Okay, so that's your current account balance. Under tax, when you click that, when you go to tax report, this shows you that, yes, this school has reported for these 3 quarters, what's been reported. If you need a detail, I could click on this and I could see who was reported under each person. Okay, so that's like your printout. So those are just the things in the correspondence I just want you to be aware of them. The other thing I do want to just show you real quickly is this adjust tax and wage report. Once you've filed a report, and this quarter has been weird because I think we've had several schools that I think went to, what's Tyler's new thing, Info Systems or InterSystems or something like that. So we had a couple schools that 2 months on the old system and 1 month on the new system. Well, we know that those data things aren't going to melt. So they may have uploaded stuff and all of a sudden have to make a correction. And then you would come into the adjust tax and wage report here and you just tell them what quarter it is. There's a drop down that says, what do I got to do? And you just, wages were incorrectly imported. And when you hit next, there's a little bit more information. And then it'll give you the whole list of your employees and an option to go in and correct those wages. Okay. You may say, oh, shoot, I've got Burden on my list and he's a board member. I know board members aren't reported to unemployment. You can go to this list, find Burden. It says delete these wages, click the box, come down to the bottom and follow your way through. And that'll take my wages off that quarterly report. And that applies to everybody. Okay. I know I'm flying through these pretty quickly, but I'm down to about 20 minutes here. I don't want to keep the commissioner waiting. But just, it's okay to go ahead and play around and look around when I know you've all got 8 million things to do besides this, but there is some information in here that you may, or you want your payroll people that does the work for me to be aware of. All righty. Other than that, if you get a problem uploading, don't call Tyler, don't call your soft, call me first, please. I can bet you 95 to 99% of the time, we can fix it with a phone call. All right, usually you're gonna get someone that says, oh, you've got the wrong file type. And it's because we're in the wrong place. All right, all we need to do is take a look at your text file, make sure everything's in the right place, make sure you're not trying to upload your wages, your withholdings instead of your wages. Very easy to figure that out. And we usually can resolve things in 10 minutes. So anytime you get an issue with that, give me a yell and we will figure that out. Okay, so in a nutshell, that is the portion of Reemploy Me that I wanted to share with you. The background on UC, again, pretty stable. The folks that I use in your offices are wonderful. Usually I have a response back within a day, so I can respond to DOL quickly. There may be a few times where they don't have the answers and I'm going to have to talk to you or talk to the superintendent to get the full thing. One thing I would recommend for everybody is that when we've got a teacher that's been told that they're not being renewed, okay, but you can resign. We're going to report that. That's reported as a discharge. And the reason is whether they resign or not, they're not coming back. The decision's already been made not to have them back. So report that to me or to the state of Maine as a discharge, quit in lieu of discharge. That's what's going to wind up being. Okay, they're entitled to benefits. And we're not here to deny anybody benefits who's entitled to it. All right, we will fight for the ones that we don't think we should pay, but we're not here to deny those that we should be paying. Okay, so now I'm going to put a different hat on, and I want to go to the our salary and data collection software program, which is in full steam right now. I sent you out emails this week that we're eager to get this portion done by December. 100% is probably not going to happen, but I would invite you to please try. I've already had requests from different superintendents and business managers for 2021 data, 21-22 data. I'm probably going to open the reporting up on that in a week or so, probably next week. But this is the opening screen that you come to, as you're aware of. If you've done it, we hit the black X. And now I'm in a dashboard. I'm using SAT 11. And the reason I'm using SAT 11, Andrea, is because I know you're done. She's got all her data in, and it just makes it easier to show folks where to go. Two areas here. The main area we go into is enter district data. That's where we go in to put, where we ask you to go in and enter the data in. The cool thing now is, if you reported data last year, you're going to have a button right here on every single screen that says copy prior year data. So you don't have to start from scratch. You click that on every single screen that you come to, and it's going to put last year's data in, which makes, in my opinion, a lot easier, because now you just got to pretty much look at the salaries or your wages for your support staff. And then, did we change our insurance amounts to everybody? Which, as we know, when you're looking at these spreadsheets, when we send them to you, well, I'm going to show you today where you can find them. Those are the two big items. You know, an extra day of sick leave in negotiations isn't a big deal. You know, another 3% of my insurance is a hell of a big deal. All right, so that's how that works. So you can fly right through these pretty quickly. Also, as soon as you hit save, this is a live, you're on the live database. So as soon as you hit save, it's posted. So there's not a third step to say, okay, I want to post my data to benchmark. It's when you, as soon as you hit save, it's done. The one area that is a little different that I need to remind people about, because this is the one where they forget, they'll write to me and say, Doug, I think I've got everything done. And I come in and I want to check your principles. I see that the green check marks mean it's done. All right, means that field is done. What you got to remember to do, though, is up here under current account, we have all of your school buildings. Okay, so there's all the school buildings that Stat 11 has. And in these is where you go and enter your principals, your assistant principals, and your AD data for salaries and, you know, years work, because it's specific to that person. So that's just one area we need to remember to check on. And again, everything is copy forward. All right, we have building details. That allows us to know if it's a high school or middle school, elementary. And the other part that it tells us is what grade levels it is, which could be different with elementary schools, because you know you've got K-1, K-2, K-4, K-8, 5-7, or 4, whatever. When you're looking at the reports, now you can compare apples to apples if you want to dig it down that deep. All righty. And again, when you hit save, that's already posted, and we go from there. Copy prior year, we're good there. And then the head count is just so that the system knows you've got 3 people coming. It should see data for 3 people or 2 people or 1 person. That's all that's for. Then the compensation detail. The only thing I want to pop here is in this one, we actually want to know who it is, because there are schools that have more than 1 assistant principal. And this is how we know the difference when you're changing it next year. Okay. So that's the basic data entry. If you are bunged up, which I know you all are up to your eyeballs and stuff, and you have this data on a spreadsheet that you could send to me, I'm more than happy to enter this in for you. Okay, I had a business manager call me the other day. He says, Doug, I haven't got time. I said, well, send it up to me. So she sent me a quick email, and in 15 minutes, her school was all done. All right, I've got time to do that if that works for you. Either with your administrators, support staff, teachers, that's fine. The really only digging on your teachers that you got to do is your total teachers and your total contracts, because everything else, contracted salaries. The rest of it's coming right out of your collective bargaining agreement. It's really pretty quick. And we're just asking for, you know, BA, MA, whatever, and we just want the base and the top. So we've tried to skinny up what we're asking for data, because we were asking for a lot of stuff before, and a lot of it was fluff. So we hope that helps. Now, what I would like to do now is I want to just give you a few minutes on the reporting section. You have access to all the reports that we have, and we haven't done a real good job of getting that info out. So I want to take a couple minutes to show you. Very simple and incredibly easy. And even this year, we've made it red, so you can see run statewide reports here. So if you want to check the reports, we're going to go right here and click. Key thing, year 21-22. Right now, there's nothing available next. We haven't opened it up because we wanted to make sure we had enough data in there to make it useful. You know, if we open that up and there's 10 schools, you just wasted 10 minutes trying to find it. So I'm going to look at with the down arrow, see every year's data that we're going to have is going to be here available to you. So I'm going to go to 21-22. So now I'm looking at data for 21-22. We provide, or Dynamic Benchmark provides 5 different reports. 5 of them in spreadsheets, 10 reports, 5 spreadsheets and 5 PowerPoints. The PowerPoint will give you a statewide view of where your school sets statewide in a percentile basis. So you just double click on it, wait for a sec, see if I can get this to come through here. But what it's doing is creating this report, and then it puts it in your download folder. So you've got them. So once you run one of those spreadsheets, you've got it, it's yours. So with this PowerPoint one, this is a quick one for you to say, you know, someone comes in and says, you know, the bus drivers, we're the worst paid bus drivers in the state. Well, you come right here and you click on the bus drivers, and it shows you your amount, 25th, 50th, 75th percentile. Okay, for every position that we have. So you can screen down quickly and see which bars you have green. You know, that's one of your positions that you have reported. All right, even if you haven't reported. So here's one, you know, they didn't report a school nurse. Fine, but you know what you're paying them, so you can see what the 25th, the 50th, and 75th percentiles are. So that's how that one works. And that's on all of them. These are the ones you're most used to seeing here is breakdown by school. We list every single school that we have, and it works the same way. So I'm going to double click on here, wait a sec, and eventually a spreadsheet will pop up down here. Come on, you got to get it just right sometimes. Come on. Well, I promise you it does. Oh, download blocked. Why? Ah. Well, trust me, it works. Shoot, I'm sorry. Well, I can do this. Yeah, I can. There we go. Patience, Doug. So this, again, this spreadsheet now is sitting in my download folder. So again, it'll go to your download folder. The change is you now have a tab for each position versus this big conglomerate thing that had 8 million positions in it that you didn't care, half of them you didn't care about. But today you're interested in payroll. So you click on payroll, there they all are. All right, now you'll see a lot of blanks. That doesn't mean they haven't reported. It means they don't have a position called payroll. It may be included under payroll duties, may be included under somebody else. So you can filter those out. And I tend to go here and say, get rid of the blanks. Boom. So there's all my payroll people, bang. You can then come to region and pick, I don't care about Aroostook. I'm not gonna say that. I don't need to look at Aroostook County because I'm too far south. So that would eliminate Aroostook County. All righty. So that's pretty valuable little tool. The next part of this I want to show you though, that makes it even easier is this edit filter right here. You can, before you even run the report, say, I'm only interested in, for example, usually if someone's in Aroostook, I said, well, you'll want to look at Aroostook and you might want to see the corner of Washington County and maybe some of Penckless, because those kind of border on it. Then when you run any of these reports, those are the only 3 regions that are going to show up. So you've already got rid of the fluff that you don't care about. Alrighty. So my suggestion to you is to get in there and just play with them. And like I said, once you get the spreadsheet, if you really want to then muckle with it, it's in your download folder. You've got it. Save it as something else and play with it. You cannot destroy our data because that form is on your machine. That report is on your machine. Okay. So that's the gist of it. My time is up. Again, thank you very much for letting me join. This has been interesting talking to a blank screen, and hopefully I didn't knock too many of you out. If we've got time for questions, I'm happy to answer anything. And other than that, you all have my phone number, but don't be scared to use it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. If folks have questions, we do have a couple of minutes before our 10 o'clock. I think the salary information is a lot different than 5 or 10 years ago, huh, Doug?
Oh, goodness sakes. I mean, I would spend 3 days printing out those great big sheets to send to you, and then enter them all in, and then run reports and run reports. This is Maine Municipal Association, which is our neighbor. We went up there because that's what they were using, and that's how we found out about it. And it is pretty simple. Use that copy forward, folks. It makes sure it cuts your time down to nothing, really. And again, if you've got the data on a spreadsheet, I am more than happy to enter that in for you. And if I have questions, I'll just call you.
I think that's great information today, Doug.
Super. Well, I'm glad it worked. And all you folks enjoy your weekend. I'll be moving my shorts drawer into the bins this weekend. I don't think I need my shorts on anymore this year. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
We have just a couple minutes. I haven't seen the commissioner join yet. So if you need to just take a quick 2-minute stretch break, now's your time. And then as soon as Commissioner Macon joins us, we'll start in with her presentation.
Commissioner Macon's just popping in.
So I think Pender's with us. Pender, are you with us?
She is, we just admitted her. Maybe her system is still connecting.
Yeah, she is.
Hi, sorry about that, everybody. How are you?
Morning.
Morning.
How are you?
I am okay. I'm on the road. You might notice I'm here in my blurry car thing. I'm on my way to help my family with a bit of a medical emergency, which is going to be fine. Everything's okay. But I'm pulled over at a gas station, and from here I will speak to you today because I can't think of a group of more courageous unsung heroes than the people who are running the machinery of public education in these extraordinary times. And so I told them I was going to pull over and going to have this conversation with you and just thank you for everything you have been doing. Should I just launch right now into it?
Just launch, Pender. I just, I just appreciate you and what you've done. You've included business managers, and when you and I and Lucy first met a couple of years ago, we had the discussion about how to include business managers and how business managers and what role do they play in public education in Maine, and feeling that our roles are important and are an integral part, even though we're not in the classroom. And we're excited to have you. We thank you. We thank you for your time and look forward to hearing what you have to share with us this morning. So I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Like I started to say, it's actually a huge honor for me to be here with you today. I can't even begin to tell you how much I've learned in the time since we first met in the first months of my tenure. Now I'd say after I'm going on 3 years in this role, which makes me by far the most veteran commissioner of education, at least 10 years. So I think I'm getting there. I am really grateful that you all have loaned Andrea to me and to the Department of Education, as she has well represented all of you in our stakeholder, we call it the EdOrgs, Education Organizations meetings. We started holding those meetings right after COVID, and I apologize because we did not specifically have somebody representing MeASBO at the beginning, but we now do, and you have a phenomenal representative there who's hopefully bringing your voice to us. As far as we can tell, that's what's happening, and bringing messages and information that we share at those meetings back out to you all. Backing way up, we started out our administration nearly 3 years ago with some pretty idealistic goals, and we were quite hopeful that we would be able to re-professionalize education and give the power back to the experts who know how policy and theory and research play out in the classroom, in the central offices, how things really happen. Even though we have the most, I think we're either the most or second only to DHHS with all of the stake in medical stuff in terms of being the most legislated, mandated to department in the entire government. And I think it's because everybody went to school at some point, so they all have a great idea on how it should be done better. We thought we could get in there and say, all right, look, we are gonna be supporting the amazing professionals who know the work, who are boots on the ground doing that work. And all right, so I'm just gonna be like flat out honest with you. Here it is. My mom is in the mild to moderate Alzheimer's stage. She's driving behind me. It looks like she's pulling away. I'm just gonna go mute for 1 second. No kidding, right? This is like life. Life just happens. I'm going to convince her to wait. I'm following her up the road. That's what this is all about. Thank you for your patience. 1 sec. Okay, we're still good. Sorry about that, everybody. So we came in with all these ideas of how we were going to like tell the legislature like it is and just say you need to listen to the experts rather than dictate to them how things ought to play out in schools. And we worked very hard to rebuild what had been fairly broken connections between the field and the Department of Education over the series, the revolving door of leadership that had been at the helm in the department for so long. And we I think did a good job of building those relationships. Thank goodness, because we could not have predicted how deeply we would need those relationships when at the end of our first year, when we finally got the lay of the land, we're ready to launch on some of our own policy agenda and initiatives to really, in our policy agenda, just so you know, was stopping the mandates, slowing things down, letting the voices from the field, the experts doing the work, let us know how we can serve them best. And we're about to launch that, and then came COVID. And I think sometimes, actually, I often think about the business managers and how the impact of the disruption to, I mean, you all had to figure out who gets paid and who doesn't get paid back when they first went on remote learning. Many of you did. You had to figure out how to make sense of the new school lunch and the enterprise accounts that weren't getting fed, even though there were, a better series of reimbursements for those who were making use of it. I mean, these little minute things that are not making the news, that are not out there at on anybody's front of their landscape. We know that behind the scenes, you guys were coping with this kind of stuff. And suddenly, after all the years that you have wished for more money, you got all the money you could ever imagine. It's raining dollars. It's raining hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's like, it reminds me of that ironic song by Alanis Morissette. Like, it's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. You got all this money, but you can't use it where you need it necessarily. The trappings around how it must be reported, how it must be used, how it has to be only for certain things, the fact that it's coming in waves, and certain waves are 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4 if we get the right extension, how to strategically not waste this like just incredible, unprecedented, and precious opportunity afforded all of us in public education by the federal relief funding, but also how to be ready to maximize the benefit, how to not be redundant, how to make sure that we're using the funds that we need today, that are available today, and saving the ones that we can possibly save. How about those federal procurement rules, and how about they're different, right? There's the education federal procurement rules. The Treasury goes by a whole different set, so CRF. And by the way, backing up, I'm proud of the fact, even though it was a pain in your butts, I'm very proud that we were able to get as much of the CRF at the very beginning of this for Maine schools. When I speak with my colleagues who are commissioners across the nation, none of them were given access to any of the CRF, the original coronavirus relief funds. Everyone got the ESSER funds. Nobody got the CRF that I know of, except for Maine. The governor said, yep, here's $367 million. And we worked with superintendents who likely worked with some of you to create what we thought was quite a fair formula. I hope you all would agree, because we've heard nothing negative other than this was fair. The allocations were fair. We got it out there to everybody pretty quickly. And yeah, it's been a pain in the butt to follow up on the back end. And it's probably been your pain in the butt. And for that, I'm very sorry, but I'm glad that, we're at least able to say that we're making that level of an investment. I remember from my first meeting with MeASBO, when I was early on, you guys mentioned the 3% rule of unallocated funds, only being able to keep so much. Meanwhile, the municipalities got to keep 10. I did some research on it, and it says that, any healthy large organization would have at least 6 months of full operating costs in reserve, which is, much bigger than that. And I've been really working hard with AFA, the legislative committee, who are in charge of all of the funds, to just make sure that they're aware of that. And I know that there is flexibility there. I was I just want you to know, I did remember that piece. I thought that's just so unfair. Also, I'm proud of the fact that we were able to get the UAL, for those of you who, I don't know if all of you remember it, but the unfunded actuarial liability, which is the cost of retired educators' benefits, was lumped in during the previous administration as part of the state's contribution. It was never 55%, but it was counted as part of the 47%, for example, that you were getting. In our first year, we discussed it with the governor. She 100% said that is so fake. We're not going to count that anymore. So we began a trajectory, I think, of 51.78 in our first budget. But while it wasn't 55%, it was a legit 51.78%, irrespective of that actuarial liability. And so we were able to remove that. And then later, as you know, in the last biennium, we were able to move the state contribution to public education to the rightful 55%. That was one of our major goals. And I'm really proud that we were able to do that. I know it didn't help everybody equally. I know that there's nothing I could say or do or provide that would universally improve the condition for, and all of you at the same time. Some are helped and some are harmed in every possible way when we have a finite pot of money. All that is to say, I don't know how you've been holding on to, it's like wrangling 3 or 4 bulls to be managing the federal relief funds on top of everything else you're doing. It's my hope that you're feeling well supported in your own offices, in your own communities. And I hope that you're feeling well supported by the Department of Education, because it's going to be our relentless focus to make sure that you know that we're here for you. I know that, I don't know if they're on here, but I know Tyler and Paula have been doing office hours and meetings and trainings with you all. And I hope that that access has been, helpful. I know that their whole hearts are in it. They're in it for all the right reasons. And I'm also grateful that you're sharing your voice now at our inter-organizational meetings each week, so that we can hear what's happening for you in the field and you can hear where we're heading at the state level. So I'd be happy to take any questions or comments briefly before I.
Hi, Pender. I know you've got a full plate on your hands right now, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I know you're going through some personal items right now, and we don't want to hold you from your family and those items either. We're all human beings, and we all need to be with our families when they need us. So we do respect that. I will say just quickly, and allow some folks to have questions just quickly if there are some, but from the first time Pender came to office, Lucy and I made a call and said, hey, can we meet with you? And she said yes. And I will say that any time that we've ever met, your final comment to me has always been, call me and let's meet again, and reach out to me and reach out to my staff. And we have, and you've always said yes. Tyler has always said yes. We've had a great relationship with Tyler and Joanne and the whole group and the DOE finance. It has come leaps and bounds, in my opinion, and I think for a lot of MeASBO members, from what it was 10 years ago. And I will say that, and we say this often when we go to regional or national conferences, and we say we have a relationship with the Department of Ed and the Maine Department of Ed, other states look at us very weirdly and say, you mean you actually have conversations, interact, and plan things? And we say yes. And that's unheard of, just regionally as well as nationally. So thank you for your leadership, your team's leadership. We truly appreciate it. I don't want to hold you up. I know you have some very personal things going on, but do folks have any questions for Pender before we let her go on her journey for the day?
Mark Bouchard, Kara, just would you mind joining us again at some future meeting?
Oh, absolutely. I would spend, if you want to have like a conversation. I read this a couple times. I'm like, address the group, and I started to write a speech last night, and I thought, nah, I'll come and talk in circles apparently about, what we're what we were aiming to do and how it changed with COVID, but how we recognize it anyhow. I'd love to come and just have like a conversation back and forth with, just to really hear how everything's going and what we can do better. We are deeply committed to being a service organization serving the experts in the field, and that's you guys. So
Thank you. That would be great.
Pender, I have a quick question. One of our biggest concerns is the bills that have been coming through the legislature and how they affect school districts and, where that communication is, such as the one that's still an appropriation, but bus drivers getting unemployment during the summer. We have a hard enough time finding bus drivers now. When they are allowed to collect during the summer, there will be no incentive to even have summer school programs and drive for us during the summer. So very, very concerned about that outstanding bill that's in the legislature, and a couple of them that obviously that are still out there. So I know there's no answer for it, but I hope that there's huge concern, and we're hoping to figure out how we get our voice heard in those things and what the reality is. So
there is an answer, Diane. And I mean, maybe not for some of these things that are out of the gate, but we do have a website, and you can always reach out to Tyler and Paula. They can point you toward where we have all of the pending legislation listed. We don't have control over many of the bills that come through, right? They come pushing through from a legislative, agenda. A legislator has an idea or a constituent has an idea and they push it through. We do our very best. We reach out to Joanne and her team to get fiscal notes slapped on things, to recognize that if we're going to pass something, it's not implementable or enforceable unless it comes with a fiscal note. And then sometimes they take our fiscal note and attach it, and other times they just don't. This is a weird thing about it. So the answer, though, is this. There is time to reach out to your local legislators, make those relationships. One phone call from a person in the field has far more power than you could ever even begin to imagine. And I think I have been in the field, and I think I very rarely reached out to a legislator. And I think I might have just assumed I wouldn't have any power in my voice. I can tell you from now, this angle, I'll never be quiet again. I will be back in the field. I'll be relying on one of you guys here in an office that I'll be working in someday when I'm no longer at the state. But I also know that I will have my voice heard always as part of this democratic process that is almost like, it's way too fast. It's like watching ping pong tournament sometimes when the legislators are flying around with their ideas and people are going back and forth. But right now, there are a few things that are quite concerning on the appropriations table held over, and that'll be addressed in this upcoming session. Another one, in addition to the one you mentioned, is a special education bill that passed the committee and was intercepted by our awesome team, who said, wait a minute, there's no fiscal note on this thing. The special education bill says that in order for any change on an IEP to happen, the parents have to have, full sign off permission. So like if a student were going to move back into the regular classroom or no longer needs a one-on-one because they've progressed or however that is, if a parent's like, no, I want to keep them in, whatever the expensive out of district school, nothing can happen without the parent permission. So this will create mediations that are expensive, and this will create possible longer term expensive services if you can see what I'm saying. So there will be large impact, I think, to school budgets if this passes. Anyhow, what happened was the governor held it up and said, nope, it has no fiscal note. You can't pass this. It's not going on for vote. They brought it back and they put $1,000 fiscal note. Statewide, you guys can split up $1,000 to address that cost. So what you need to do is find out how to reach, you got to reach out to AFA. Those are the people who are looking at what's on the table. It's going to get voted off the table probably as soon as things open back up. But somebody needs to hear from the field that this is not, the $1,000 is a joke. It's not, there's no possible way that captures. And is it possible to know the whole cost? Probably not, right? We have to do, but we could look at what are some of the average numbers of contested changes and so forth. Anyway, that's just another horrifying example looming ahead of you. We have done all we can do. We can't go in and change that fiscal note. The department doesn't have that power. So it lies there on a table with nothing but $1,000 holding it on the table. It's going to fly off as soon as they open, unless they hear a lot from you. So find out who your local people are, work through them if you have a good relationship. And if you don't, you all should develop a relationship with the AFA committee. Administrative and Financial Affairs Committee. They are the ones who vote the budgets. They're the ones who are in charge of the money. And
And Tyler just put that in the chat, Pender.
thank you, Tyler. Oh, you are there. You can scroll around the millions of
Oh,
faces.
well, I just got here. I was with MSMA for a few minutes, so.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, anyway, I was just saying, I'm grateful for you and Paula, because I know you've been doing a lot of office hours and connections. Is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about before I hit the road now? But know that this is the beginning of a conversation. I'll come to you now. How often do you guys meet?
We usually meet 4 to 5 times a year, Pender.
I'd be happy to come a couple times anyway. And feel free individually to reach out to us. I mean, I know you probably feel very comfortable reaching out to Tyler, but if there's anything I can ever help with, or you have a thought or want to kick around a big idea, I crave that opportunity. So I hope you won't be strangers.
Thank you, Pender. We really
All right,
had
everybody.
time today. We look forward to having you at future meetings as well. And thank you for your personal time for all of us, and also for Lucy and Andrea being part of that EdOrg meeting. It has given business officials in Maine a very significant voice, which we've been craving and needing, and you've helped provide that. So thank you for that.
All right. Well, I am so grateful for the work you all do. And I know it's just never been harder. You're holding both the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges at the same time that have ever faced public education. And I think you're doing an amazing job. And we'll be back in touch. And thank you for forgiving me for being in my car and so informal. And I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Pender. Have a great day.
Bye.
We will, by the schedule, we have a break until 10:40. At 10:40, Cheryl Lang, who's in charge of Esea, will be here with some representatives from her area, and also talking about just overall what's happening in Esea that we need to know about, and also about the new billing system. So we'll start that at 10:40. And we didn't even plan that conversation with Penda, but that leads into at 11:20. We'll have Representative Bruce White talk to us about exactly what we were just talking about, how bills become laws and what is our impact as citizens and as business managers to help direct some of that and provide information to legislators as they make laws. So we'll take a break till 10:40 and we'll reconvene at that time. See about 13 minutes from now. Welcome. We got about 3 or 4 more minutes before
Sure.
they're coming back from break, but in the meantime, Lucy just gave you screen sharing rights, so you can you should be able to screen share here whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Colin. It's so nice to be able to
Welcome.
put a face with a name. Thank
It's
you.
nice to meet you.
Yes. And I am being joined by Chris Line, and he is also going to need screen sharing rights if that's possible.
Yep, it is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, Lucy will make that happen like right now.
Like magic.
Give a few more minutes just for people to come on in, but
Sure.
yeah, we've had a lot of email chats.
Yes, we have. And I have with Chris as well. But we're making it happen. That's what counts.
It looks like wherever Chris is a very nice place.
I know, I do love his background. I'm actually up at the department today and my background looks pretty terrible compared to his.
This is Columbus, Ohio, and I think they've probably done some Photoshoppy stuff to glamorize it a little bit.
No. Uh,
Up here in Maine, Chris, we had a pretty heavy frost on our vehicles this morning. I noticed when I went out to go to work, I had to actually warm my vehicle up for the first time.
Scraping the windshield. There's no fun
Mhm.
there.
It's that time of year.
Mm-hmm. It is. How has your morning meeting gone so far, Colin?
It's gone well. We just heard from Pender, so
Yes.
that was nice. And we've got you folks, and then we've got a state representative after you folks. So
Nice.
as you saw on the agenda, you guys have about 40 minutes. So usually if we can leave about 5 minutes at the end or so for folks to ask questions, and I'll introduce you here in just a minute and we'll get going.
Sure.
So it's 10:40, folks. Welcome back. Today we have Cheryl Lang and Chris Line talking about ESEA, talking about just an overall of the program. What is the new billing system looking like as best we can. We were hoping that Christy Auger was going to be able to join us, but she's not able to today. So Cheryl's going to fill in as best she can, and Chris is going to fill in as best he can, and try to still give us some meaningful and purposeful conversation. What we really were hoping for with this was, one, for folks to meet Cheryl if you haven't, know what ESEA is doing, what has changed, an overview. I think there's been a lot of changes in the past year. There's been a lot of changes with billing. There's been some changes with staffing. And we've just felt in scheduling this, it was really important to put faces with names for us to see them to see us, and really get a flavor for what do we as business managers need to know that's happening? What are the things that are happening in the department that would make their life as well as our life easier, more cohesive, and more efficient in the overall process? And what are kind of some of those tidbits of information that we need to know? And who do we reach out to? I think that's always a struggle at any level, whether it's in our school organizations or at the state level of, we have this question, who do we go to? Who do we reach out to? Where do we get information, and how do we get that information and share it? So with that, I'll turn it over to Cheryl and Chris and let you folks take it from there. I think they both have a little bit to screen share, and we'll go from there. So Cheryl, it's all yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Colin. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to come on today. And as Colin said, put faces with names, because it's always really much easier to know that there is someone to connect to if you can actually put a face with a name. So I am excited to be here this morning to be able to present from the ESEA federal programs perspective. And as Chris also said, contrary to what the agenda says, Christy Auger was not able to join us this morning. Unfortunately, she fell ill with the COVID pandemic going around, and so she wasn't able to be here. I did go to a backup plan with another member of the ESEA federal programs team, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here either due to family illness. And not that we don't value Chris's input, because we do, but I have to say, I really did stretch my limits as far as who can I bring on that is really going to be able to help you understand the invoicing system and the changes that have occurred, and This is not in Chris's contract, but I reached out to him and he was incredibly fast at responding and saying, absolutely, I can jump on with you, Cheryl. So I couldn't thank him enough for being here with me today. Between he and I, if we can't answer your questions, we will certainly take them back to our team or the department as a whole, because as we'll talk about today, the ESEA federal programs team is not the only team that's utilizing the new Grants for Me platform. Several teams within the department are, and I will talk about that further in the presentation. So let's get started. Colin, could you give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen, please? Perfect. All right, so as I said, we couldn't be more excited to be here this morning. And just to give you a brief overview of our time with you, I will go over the introductions, which I've pretty much done, but I'll make sure that I let you know exactly who we are and what the purpose of us being here today is. And then we're going to give you a brief overview of the journey from GEMS, the GEMS grant management platform, to the Grants for Me grant management platform. Chris is going to give a Grants for Me invoicing demonstration. I am going to share with you the resources that we are providing in relation to the Grants for Me platform, and then we will wrap it up with some questions and hopefully some answers. But as I said, we're not the ones that are knee deep in the actual invoicing part of it, but we can absolutely bring questions back to the team so that we can get the answers for you. All right, so as I said, I am Cheryl Lang, and I am privileged to be the ESEA Federal Programs Director at the Maine Department of Education, and I am joined this morning by Chris Line, and Chris is the Director of Software Engineering at Link, who was formerly HMB when we entered this journey with them. They are the developers of our new grant management system, and he has been with us this entire journey. We couldn't be more excited to have our relationship with him and the organization. They have been so incredibly responsive and really getting us to the point that we're currently at and still continuing the journey with us. Thank you, Chris, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Did you want to say a few words before I move on?
Yeah, well, so Cheryl introduced me. I'm the Director of Software Engineering at Link. I've spent about the last 20 years implementing online grants management systems for state departments of education around the country. And as Cheryl said, for the last 14 months or so, I've been working directly with Maine on their Grants for Me implementation. So I've worked with a number of states, and every state does a little bit differently. And each time we do an implementation, I learn something new. And Maine's got some unique things that you're doing. So it's been an interesting journey for me, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so the ESEA federal programs journey from the GEM grant management platform to the Grants for Me grant management platform. We are one of the biggest departments that are utilizing the Grants for Me grant management platform, and we're probably the one that has the most information as far as programming, the programmatic side of it and the fiscal side of it, currently operational in the grants management platform. However, as I said earlier, several other departments are also using this platform. We have IDEA utilizing it. We have the McKinney-Vento utilizing it, CTE, and there is possibilities for others to be utilizing it at the same time. We are currently living in two worlds, as you probably all know. We're still living in the GEMS world, and we are we have moved our FY21 programming and fiscal management over to the Grants for Me grant management platform. And as we know, that hasn't been as smooth of a transition as we wanted it to be, but we were very prepared to handle the hiccups that we did handle. And we recognize that that's not an easy transition, in particular midstream. As you recall, we did have to pause the invoicing, which is a challenge to do. We recognize that from your standpoint more than anything. And then we moved it over to Grants for Me. In doing so, we had some hiccups and had to pause again, but we are now operational. And what I think you're going to see a little bit of today is some of the things that have to occur in FY21 invoicing, unlike what will occur in FY22 invoicing, because of the nature of the fact that we brought it from GEMS already in progress over to Grants for Me. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. So we do recognize this lift, and we recognize that we're building this plane as we're flying it, but we also recognize that there's value in making the moves that we make and intentionality, and we do so with looking at all of that in the behind the scenes before we make the move. And so it really was important for us to be able to make that move midstream, even though we recognized the challenges that would be posed as a result of doing so. So again, just as Colin said earlier, being able to put faces with names, being able to know who to connect to, and being able to see the resources that are available to help guide us all through this process is going to be instrumental. And that's what we really hope you walk away with today. So here you can see a link on the screen, and I'm going to pop that link into the chat once Chris takes the screen sharing over. And that link is to the Maine Department of Education Esea section of our website, and there is a section specifically in there devoted to all of the trainings that we have done thus far in relation to Grants for Me. So if you haven't had an opportunity to visit that site, I suggest that that's a really great place to visit when you have that opportunity. And what we did there is we were very mindful in making sure that rather than putting out lengthy videos with timestamps to specific sections within the video, we knew and valued the time that you have to devote to things such as this. And when you're in the moment, you want instant answers because that's the efficiencies that you have to work within. So what we did was we created small, what we like to call as snippet videos, just little, they're 2.5 minutes up to 8 minutes long. And there's several in there right now. And then as we see needs come up and frequently asked questions repeatedly, we try to get videos done in relation to that, because if one of you is asking that question, chances are many of you are having that same question. In addition to that, several of the questions that have been asked has really prompted us to recognize problem areas that we can focus on and find answers to. So don't ever think that a question isn't a good question to ask, because it really does help if we have your eyes on it and that you can help us to problem solve any unforeseen issues of concern. All right, and at this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Chris, but I'm going to continue screen sharing for this particular example. Chris?
Thank you, Cheryl. So we're going to talk a little bit about the invoicing, particularly around, in this case, transferability, as I think that's one of the differences between what you're seeing, what you've historically had in GEMS and the way that it works in Grants for Me. So in Grants for Me, when you move your money across grants, you budget that money, in the grant that you've moved it to, and you don't delineate it of, hey, this is money I'm budgeting that's, even though I'm in Title V, it came from Title 2A or something like that. You just budget it in the destination grant. When you go to invoice, the system you will invoice it all in that grant you moved it to. In the past, I think you've created a separate invoice for the, the grant itself, and then another invoice for the money that you transferred into the grant. But in this case, in Grants for Me, you would do a single invoice, against that destination grant, and the system will automatically in the background divvy the payment out proportionally based on the transfer. So in this case, if you invoice $20,000 for Title I, and you've moved money from Title IV into Title I, it will prorate that payment based on the transfer. So in this case, if you had $18,000 that was Title I money and $2,000 that was Title IVA money, it would proportionalize that automatically in the background. And so what that means is you might get, when you submit a single invoice for Title I, it might come to you in two payments separated by a day or two, as those process separately in the accounting system. And again, this is something the system will do automatically for you, and you don't need to do anything there. A difference you'll notice when you look at the 21, when you budgeted the money in 21, you have line items under a grant for like transfers. You don't have those in 22. And so something you may see when you invoice in 21 in Grants for Me is you might put an expenditure against the transfer row. The system doesn't really know that that's delineating that transfer up to that other grant, so it will proportionalize those payments. And what you'll see sometimes though, like I've seen an invoice or a district where everything out of the originating grant has been paid and the only thing remaining is the transfer grant. So the system will, I guess I'll use the term, to the extent possible, try to proportionalize that payment based on the input grants, but it may not always be able to do that. So it may not happen in all cases. Now I'm going to take the screen and kind of talk you through or walk you through some examples that I think hit on this concept. So let me start my screen share. Want to share. So can everybody see my screen? So I guess maybe not yet. So I think, are you looking at my Grants for Me window?
Now.
You can see my Grants for Me window?
Yes, we can.
So what I want to do is, even though we're talking about invoicing, there's a few screens in the funding application I want to hit, because I think that we'll kind of call back to these. So I'm going to go into, and I'm just randomly, I've chosen Jonesboro because they have some transfer data that I think is relevant. And I think you probably should be familiar with most of these screens that we're going to hit. The first one I want to look at is the allocation screen. And if we scroll out here, in this particular example we're going to talk through, we have Title V funds, and they have $8,200 of native Title V allocation. And then they have moved $10,000 from their Title IVA grant. So they got $10,000 in Title IV. They moved all of it to Title V. So they have $18,214 in Title V. 8,200 of that is Title V, and 10,000 of it is Title IV. So that's the first thing I want to show you. I want to go then to the school and district projects, because this project-based budgeting is something that we had to do specifically for Maine. As I said, each state does things a little bit differently. This is functionality that we created in the system to match Maine's process. So over here, they have the Title V money, and they've allocated most of that to this Jonesboro Elementary School project. And then they put a little bit of it in the Esea program coordinator project. And I think you've probably all seen how those project budgets work. But what I don't know is, if we get down to the bottom of the funding application section, there's sections for these grants, and a lot of them you don't really have to do anything. You may be familiar with the Title I. There's a ranking of schools page you need to fill out and a few things. But all of these grants have a budget overview page, and this is just a read only. I don't know if anybody has gone to these pages or seen them and wondered what this is, or digested this information. But what this page does is it takes all of the budget entries from your various projects and sort of combines them, basically splits out, because your project might have 3 or 4 grants in it. So the first thing it does is it splits out and it says, okay, this is just the Title V portion of all of my project budgets, tracked back to the objects and functions. So this is what Jonesboro has approved across their various projects using Title V funds. And again, they only have 2 projects using Title V funds, but they could have 10 or 12. But this is what the invoice is going to be based upon and validate against, is this approved budget, across all their projects of the Title V funds. So we have the objects and the functions. So we'll refer back to that here in a second. But over here on the left navigation, I'm going to go to invoices, and we're going to look at 2022. And we're going to look at Title V, but this outer screen, this shows me all of my funding applications. So Jonesboro also has special education. They could go into those if they wanted to. And they can jump back to 2021 as well for the invoicing that they'll continue that began in GEMS. But we're going to look at the 2022. And so we have a couple fields we show you for all the grants here. Available budget. This is just this is the amount that you budgeted. There's a total available amount. In the system, there's the ability to, I guess, for the state to sort of divvy out the money. I think early in the year, you may not have access to the entire 100% of the various funds you've been awarded. So the state can set a limitation on how much the system is going to pay. So if that's the case, you might see this number be less. If it was only like 25% funded, for example, you might see, I don't know, that would be $4,500 some dollars roughly that was available. We know how much you've been paid. In this case, they haven't been paid anything on any of these grants because it's early in the year. And so they have $18,000 available to them for the Title V grant. So if we click into that, we track over the course of the year all the invoices they've submitted against Title V, and they haven't done any yet. So they don't have any in their list, but we're going to go ahead and create one. And this says we're going to change the status to draft started. And so this should, I think this probably looks pretty familiar to a funding application, hopefully. So if you worked in the consolidated application, you could come in here and find your way around. We show you what district you're working in, what fiscal year, and the grant that you're working in. So as you're jockeying back and forth between funding applications and grants, you can always get your bearings up here in this subheader menu of what you're looking at. The request is in a status of draft started. You can move it to draft completed once you filled it out, or you can delete it. We do these status change hints. I don't know if you've seen these, but if you hover on this, it will show you, here's the role required to make this status change, and here's users in my district that could perform this status change. So if I was, for example, working on this, filling out this invoice, and I thought it was ready to go, perhaps I don't have the LEA fiscal rep role. I need somebody who can submit this or move to draft completed. It's going to tell me I can talk to Shannon Gartmeyer or Amanda Sprague. Those are the users in my district that could make this status change. And then we have the pages that make up a particular invoice. We have the history log and the ability to create a comment. This just shows you the status changes that have occurred on the invoice, as well as any discussions back and forth among the district or with the Esea. It's similar to what you have in the funding application, so I won't go too far into it. There's basically 2 or 3 main pages. We have the page where you report your expenditures, the request overview, and then you may upload some related documents with the invoice if you have documentation of receipts or something. The system will validate the invoice in the background automatically, so it will call out errors and warnings, and you would be prevented from submitting it forward in the workflow if you have any errors. If you have warnings, it will just tell you have a warning, but it would allow you to submit. And then you can print the invoice as well. And this will just generate a PDF. You can print specific pages, or you can select some combination of pages that you want to print. But the 3 main pages that we'll talk about here are really the 2 main pages, the expenditures and the request page. So as we go into this expenditures page, again, we said this is building off of my approved budget that we looked at. So I have that. I've got some screenshots here that I can refer back to more easily. So this is the approved budget, and we can only put expenditures in cells with approved budget. So we only see the columns and rows with approved budget, and you'll notice these cells, the instruction 3000 doesn't have approved budget. So when we look at the request, these 2 cells are going to be disabled. So you couldn't even expend funds there if you wanted to. What you would need to do if you wanted to expend here is you would need to initiate a revision to your funding application, update your budget to put funds into those cells, get that revision entirely approved, and then you would be able to come back here and report expenditures these cells would open up and you could put expenditures against them. But I can hover on these cells and it will tell me, hey, here's what your approved budget is, here's how much you've requested to date, and here's what's remaining. So, and there's little hints that kind of guide me as I fill out my expenditures of what I'm going to be validated against. So I'm going to say, I'm going to enter $12,000 here just as an example, and then I'm going to put $4,000 of expenditures against the support services. So I'm going to save and go next, and this is the same save and go to that you have in the funding application. It's really just going to take me to this request page. And so on this page, I've indicated $16,000 of expenditures. I have that $18,000 budget. I'm going to save and go next. And basically, we're going to focus on this fiscal summary portion. It shows me my allocation and my budget. I'm going to need to enter the service period. The system knows how much I have been paid already, and it knows from the previous page how much I'm saying I spent. So it's going to calculate then that I have a deficit of $16,000. So if I submit and get this approved, it will pay me $16,000. I'm going to enter my begin and end date, and I'm going to say this was my request for September. So I'll say this is from September 1 to September 30th. Excuse me, that took me to November. So I'm going to save this and go back to the sections page. And so I have some validation messages out here. If I try to move it to draft completed, it's going to tell me, hey, you have validation errors. You need to fix those before you can submit it. So I can click there to go into them. And it's telling me, hey, the amount I'm requesting for personal services and salaries is in excess of what I'm approved. And so I can go over my approved budget on a given cell by, I think it is the greater of 10% or $500 possibly. And I don't, that the 500 thing I'm not sure about, but I'm approved in this cell for 6,400. So I could go up to 7,000. If I needed to say, if I need to spend $12,000 here, I need to get a revision of the budget with that funding in there to be able to pass this validation. But what I'm going to do, and so that's an error, that's what's preventing me from submitting. It's also telling me I have a warning that I didn't upload any invoice backup or receipts. That's an optional related document though, so I don't have to do that. But if I click review here, I can go into the page and change it. And I'm going to just go ahead and cut this to $6,000 just to pass the validation. So what we've done here is I've reduced my expenditures to $10,000. So the request now, instead of being for $6,000, it would be for $10,000. And if we go back to the sections page, it'll now pass that validation. I just have the warning on the related document, but I'm going to go ahead and move it to draft completed. So this is something the fiscal rep would have to do. I have to agree to this assurance, which will then get documented in the history log that I agreed to that. And now it's come to the state. So somebody at the state, maybe Christie or whoever works with this district or grant, is going to come in and review it. They're going to look at the expenditures you reported, your request, any related documents, and they're going to say, you know, this is approved, I'm going to move it forward, or no, I can't approve this, I'm going to send it back to you, in which case you would get notified that it's been sent back to you. She would probably give you some indication in the history log of what the issue is. We're going to go ahead and approve it though. And so now grants management has approved it, and it's going to go to the accounting department, which will eventually interface it with the Advantage Me system, which will make the payment. And what we talked about, this is a $10,000 payment, and I'm going to go back to my Word document now. This is the allocations we looked at, the 8,200 and the 10,000. So this is basically the ratio on this particular grant is about 45% Title V and 55% Title IV. So on a $10,000 request, the system should break this out to be around 4,500 and 5,500, and I'll show you that in a minute. So this would go to the accounting system. This would actually, this single request would split into two lines based on that. And so what could happen is you'll get a payment of around $4,500, and then maybe it could be the same day or a day or two later, you would get paid $5,500, which is the balance of it. So that's a process that runs. The accounting people work through that, and then it interfaces the accounting system. I'm just going to bypass that and sort of manually make the status change. And so this is now state accounting system paid. We're going to assume that you got checks for both of those in the amount of $10,000. And what I can do, you can click into this, and this is something we just added like a week or so ago. Once this request is finalized and you've been paid it, you'll be able to click this link to payment details, and it will show you here is the breakout. So I said it would be around 55.45, and it's pretty close to that within whatever rounding it had to do. But it's basically saying of this $10,000 payment, it paid $54.90.12 from Title IV funds and $45.09.88 from Title V funds. So you can see that in the particular invoice itself once it's paid. And what you can also do is we go out here to this invoices screen, which is where we came in, right? We were down here, and then this is the invoice that you've been paid on. And as the year progresses, you'll just go in here and create more invoices over the course of the year. And you can go into any of them and look at the payment breakouts based on how we talked about it. But what you can also do is on these transfer grants, you'll notice this received amount column. This is a clickable link, and it says view payment details. This will show me a running total over the course of the year, the breakout of payments. So we only have the one payment right now, so these amounts match what the individual payment showed you, but 3, 4, 5 payments in, you can come here to just get an overall summary of across all my Title V payments. How did those pay out, or how much have I been paid from each one of the grants that fund Title V? So it's a little different. You would create the entire request in Title V rather than having a Title V invoice and then a Title V transfer from Title IV invoice. You just put in a single invoice against your Title V budget, and the system will divvy that out in the background and pay it. But you might, and I know there's been some questions about this, you might get several payments, or you put in a request for $10,000 and you get paid $4,500, and you're wondering, why did I get paid $4,500? That amount isn't meaningful to me, but it's an instance. In all likelihood, it would be where you've requested payment from a grant that received transfer, and you're going to receive that payment as several different amounts, just because of the way the accounting system handles it, that you would receive those potentially over the course of a few days.
Cheryl, just a couple of questions. One is, how do we know if we have to provide backup documentation? I think that may be more Cheryl.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Colin. So with backup documentation, we require backup documentation the first time an invoice is submitted under any title. And Christy, our financial analyst, if she needs backup documentation for anything, she will require it once the invoice has been submitted. We are trying to streamline that efficiency. And so we always say, if you have the backup documentation, even if it's not necessarily being required in the system, go ahead and put that backup documentation with the invoice, because that's just going to help get that process moving along quicker. But it's always required the first time an invoice is submitted for any title.
And then optional for times after that?
Correct.
Okay. Next question was, Chris, because you did not have enough in the budget in that section when you were doing that example and had to reduce the amount, you would not have to apply for a change in your application status. Is that correct?
Yes. So I reduced the expenditure from 12,000 to 6,000. Now, if I wanted to keep that $12,000 expenditure, what I would do, I would have to come back here to my funding application, move it to this revision started status, update the budget to have 12,000 or whatever the amount is in that cell or that combination of cells, move that all the way through the approval workflow. And then once I did that, if I came back to this invoice, that validation would clear itself by virtue of the budget having been approved with the higher amount in it. Now, you might introduce other errors because you had to decrease other cells increase that, that cell. So you might have to adjust expenditures you're reporting elsewhere. But yeah, if you need to exceed that 10% overage, you would have to revise your budget in the funding application, get that all the way approved, and then invoice.
Another question, where would you charge Title IV payment portion? If it was invoiced as Title V, I would assume it was expensed as Title V. There will not be any expenditures to offset that payment.
So I believe I understand. And we were going against a Title V budget. When you budgeted that money in Title V, you budgeted $18,000. None of this that you budgeted do we know, hey, is this Title V or Title IV? That's not something that you indicated when you budgeted. The system just knows that, hey, they budgeted $18,200, and I know that some of it is Title V and some of it is Title IV. So it will proportionally pay you based on that 55%, 45% ratio split. It's effectively assuming that, hey, 45% of this amount is Title V and 45% is Title IV. It breaks it out in the background. I don't know if that answers the question.
Do you have more clarification, Bridget, that you need to provide on that, or does that answer what you needed? You can unmute Bridget. She said it does not.
Okay.
Do you want to unmute and ask it, Bridget?
So if we're going to invoice as Title V, everything, I'm assuming on our books, we're going to charge everything to Title V, Fund 2670.
Okay.
So everything that we're doing under Title V is being charged to 2670. But the state's actually going to pay us two payments on that. One's going to come out of Title V, one's going to come out of Title IV. Where do we charge the payment that we receive from the state that's from Title IV? If we have to charge it into Title IV, I have no expenditures that will balance that off because I've charged everything under Title V.
In the accounting system you're talking
In
about.
the accounting system, in our accounting system.
Yeah. You know what? I don't have insight into the district's accounting systems. I don't know the exact answer to that. I will say that we have a number of states that do this, and I don't know what they do in that case. We don't know what goes on in the district. I don't know if that's more of a Christy or a Dan question that they can get back to you on. But yeah, so the system, it just as you move that Title IV money into Title V, it assumes that basically a proportional blend of those expenditures breaks out among Title IV and Title V. And I apologize that I can't kind of correlate that back to the district accounting system.
Tyler, are you still on?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's probably a Tyler question.
That's what I was going to say as well. Yes, Tyler Backus up here at the Maine Department of Education. It has a lot of insight into district budgeting and invoicing, and I think I would direct that question directly to him.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I don't.
Oh, Tyler, you're here.
I am. And I know I'll have to look back through because Jackie and I had some conversations around it over the years. When I don't know when this started exactly, but so I don't remember the particular answer to that.
Yeah, maybe what might be a good thing would be for you and the business managers here at the Maine DOE to come together. Have that conversation.
Tyler, what I think I've heard in previous meetings, and I could be wrong, was that you deposit the money into the grant of which it comes into, as in Title IV, and then you have to journal entry the money out of Title IV as a transfer into the grant that you actually spent it out of. That could be wrong, but that's what I remember hearing in previous meetings.
Thank you, Terry.
We'll move on
Good.
for now to the next
Yeah.
one, which is some folks have invoiced. Is it possible to open up frequently asked questions for business manager questions and comments about navigating through? Navigating through was not easy. For example, we had to add more narrative to each entry in one application. So following, I'm trying to scroll through here. So following through was not easy. We had to follow the section, project, budget, function, object code. Then checking each page was clumsy. Not sure if it was just the team here getting used to it. And then there was another, I do frequently asked questions under the Maine Department of Ed resources, wondering if that's enough, and thoughts from others about the frequently asked questions.
Sure, I can take that one, Colin. So Barb, thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. And I think what she's referring to, I'm actually going to, if I could, share my screen again. Chris, thanks. All right.
I think the frequently asked questions that you find on the website were specific from trainings in May. Now that we're using it, I feel like we're getting a little more technical in the ease of using it. So there may be newer questions and comments that business managers would want to put forward.
Yeah, gotcha on that. And you absolutely are correct in that. I think that there's two parts to what you're asking here. One is, could the frequently asked questions somehow be embedded in Grants for Me so that it can be more helpful as you're navigating through? And so initially I was going to direct you to the page that's here now. And this is just the some of the resources that we have up on our website. And I did pop that link into the chat for everyone. And it does walk you right through each section of it. But then to further chat about the, the kind of nuances that keep coming up as you learn to navigate and as we become more familiar with this system, is within the Grants for Me system, there is a, on the left-hand navigation bar, there is a help screen for each page, and we don't have that populated at this point in time, but that's where I'm thinking is going to be incredibly beneficial as we continue on this journey. And Chris, if you want to chime in on that with how other states are utilizing that, but I'm thinking that that gets to the heart of what Barbara's talking about as far as being able to navigate, being able to understand what to do when they're on particular pages and not have to bounce back and forth between, frequently asked questions and scroll through them, but actually get the help for each page. Barbara, does that begin to answer your question?
Yes, and I think part of it will come with more experience navigating it, but in the past, we could answer some questions and then take a quick view and you would see something highlighted that you were missing. Now we kind of jump into ESY under the salaries, but then we have to go back and figure out how to get to the ESY supplies. And we can't see that picture well as I was working with the special ed admin director. And that's what was really clumsy, was she was trying to figure out, well, where do I go back and put this? When I click it, I'm not on the right page.
Right.
That might be new, that might be us, but maybe others are finding the same difficulty.
Sure.
And I agree with your point that it makes sense. There's training that you do on day one when nobody has used the system before, and kind of the needs evolve as you've used the system and become more familiar and get into greater depth. So yeah, there is the capability of that help recurrent page on the left, and there are some things you can do, because I know where you're talking about. There's some things you can do with the filtering up at the top of the budget detail page where you can make it show more than one thing. So those are things that, would be good to add to the help recurrent page to just kind of give you tips of how to maybe open this up and see more things at once.
The other part, Barb, might be that Cheryl, Tyler, and I can get together and see about a training open to folks that's more technical about the billing, and trying to get in for business managers to really get into the detail and the weeds on some of these items now that we're all into it. and say, okay, here are the struggles, and get everyone in the same room at the same time might be helpful as well. A couple of things Andrea asked, and Tyler, I'll get to you in just a second. Andrea asked about invoicing. It seems to be a long time between when we invoice and when we get payment. Is that going to improve?
Yeah, and I can absolutely address that one. Well, our typical standard operational procedures are that invoicing turnaround time within the department is a 2-week, up to a 2-week window. So, and hopefully faster. However, we have been experiencing, as I said earlier, illnesses within our team. And now we have reached out across teams to get additional support so that we can bring those invoices up to date, because we know that's incredibly frustrating on your end, because you can't invoice any further until an invoice has been approved and sent on. So we do recognize that, and yes, that will improve and is already starting to as we speak. But just so you know, our typical standard operating procedure is to have invoices turned around within our department within a 2-week window.
So I waited approximately a month to have an invoice approved. And then after it was approved, it sat there waiting for somebody from the accounting team. I don't know if it's DAFs, before that approved invoice was actually pushed along for payment. So that's, you know, in our world, that's a substantial amount of time to have to wait for reimbursement. So I just want to make sure that it's being addressed, so that we're not waiting additional time after approval.
Absolutely. And thank you
Great.
for, you know, bringing that to everyone's attention. And we will absolutely bring that back to the department.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Cheryl. Tyler?
Oh, so I wanted to note that Terry was correct. So I went back and I did find the email from Jackie and Travis. And so unlike in the old system where you would have to invoice under each individual grant and then you get that reimbursement back, in the new system, you're invoicing under the single grant. And then as Chris described, it's proportionally going out, distributed among the grants. So you'll get those funds in each of those individual grants, and then you'll do a transfer to the grant for which you've set that project up through.
Thank you, Tyler. I know we're running about 5 minutes behind right now. Are there any last minute questions? It sounds like this is probably a topic that we probably want to bring back and get more into the weeds on. If that's the case for people, either put it in the chat or email one of them, either me, Andrea, or Lucy, so that they're going to one of 3 people, and let us know what you think and whether we should have more training on this, and if so, what kind of training, and what specifically are you looking for? Something more in the weeds on the next level training? Is it more accounting based? Is it something that's a combination of Cheryl and Tyler and Christy presenting something that is very specific about questions, invoicing, accounting, and making sure everyone's in the room at the same time to be able to answer those questions might be helpful. Just a thought, but share your thoughts as members of MeASBO and let us know what you think. Chris, Cheryl, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for jumping on with us and really going through this. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for allowing us to be here. Just keep in mind that we are here at the Maine Department of Education to support you. And it's really nice to see several names on the screen that I recognize as having had conversations with you before. So I just want that collaboration to continue. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And with that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, State Representative Bruce White is with us from House District 109. Welcome, Representative White. Thank you for your time today. I'm Colin Welch. I'm president of MeASBO, and you have probably about 50 business managers around the state who are interested in how you can help describe to us how a bill becomes a law. How do we as business managers in our careers, as well as citizens, have input into how laws are made? How do we provide information to our representatives? Because we obviously sit in a spot as school business and finance officials in understanding the weeds of how school finance works and how folks get paid and how education is funded, and how do we understand how a bill becomes a law, and then how do we, in our roles, provide information to our corresponding representatives to help guide and provide information on various bills. So thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours, Representative White.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thank you, Andrea, for inviting me. Got to know Andrea a little bit, know her mom. So, and if you hear any noise in the background, I got a contractor doing some work. So Zoom was convenient though. I just got to scoot inside, and it's better if I'm staying out of his way anyway. So, but thank you. And just so you know, a little background, I worked in a paper mill for 20 years, right out of high school, back with Andrea's dad. And then when the mill closed, so I know what the impact of, laws can be. We have to be sensitive to schools, businesses, things like that. Not that there were any laws that created the closure of the mill, I would say, but after the mill closed, I actually got a job. I went back to school, got a certification for computer support, and got a job after volunteering in Waterville and Winslow. They hired me. So I'm a big advocate of networking and volunteering. I was there for 20 years. So, and supported our booster clubs and, principals, assistants, went to school board meetings and things like that. So I live in Waterville right now. So just, Gary Smith, he was a business manager in Winslow. Some of you may know of him, and actually Lee Dow from years ago hired me. But anyway, a few years ago, I've always been involved with the community, and a few years ago when Tom Longstaff was getting done, he asked me, or a few people were asking if I'd be interested, and I decided to run for office. I knew very little about, what state reps did. I never really had to contact Tom Longstaff very often, or I'm not sure if I ever had to. He was in 8 years. I felt he was doing a good job, and I think most of us feel people in there, for the most part, are doing, the best they can. We trust them, hopefully, and I think so. I decided to run. My wife wasn't really enthused about it, but since then she is helping me, quite a great deal. So I will say there are 150 state reps. I am one of 2 of them in Waterville, because Waterville has 16,000 residents roughly. It's divided into half for the state reps. So my constituents are in half of Waterville, around 8,000. So those are my voters. I will say, but that I represent my constituents, listen to them, but I listen to everybody, whether they are, if they're a resident of Maine, it's, I'm, passing or voting on laws that affect everybody, not just, the 8,000 people in my area. So I'm sensitive to that. There are 151 state reps. We go from Kittery up to Eagle Lake, where John Martin is, in Fort Kent. And there are 35 senators. So, 186 legislators that can submit bills, right? And also departments, Department of Education, the governor's office, Secretary of State's office, motor vehicle and all that, they present bills, department bills. And again, this is, I feel like I'm a sophomore now, and this is my second term, so I have a lot to learn. There are probably some of you, I wouldn't doubt, that know more about this process than I am, but I'm listening and learning along the way. So my goal, I can tell you, wasn't like, oh, I want to see how many bills I can get submitted and approved. And frankly, I think sometimes we have too many, but that's just my personal opinion. We had around 2,000 bills the first session, which is what they call the long session, goes last year from January to June. We had around 2,000 bills. And this session, I'm not sure, we have some that carried over, but in the first session, just, you know, anybody can put any bill for any reason, basically. And that's why I believe there's so many. I'm careful on what I try to propose and even what I sign on to. Out of those, I'm trying to get some info, like out of those 8,000, I believe, you know, there's probably a good third of them that just die in committee. There's probably a third that get approved unanimously in committee, and then another third that are divided and have a lot of debate. So basically, if I had an idea, or if somebody, a constituent of mine or a group, you know, maybe one of you in the field in a school, or somebody in a business had an idea and they want it, they can present it to a legislator, usually somebody in your district. So if a business, it would be somebody in my district, to present something to me. We just, you know, write out a rough draft, a sentence or two, frankly, and we send it into the reviser's office, and they really do all the heavy lifting. And they will research with, you know, their staff, look for other laws in other states, and then they make it look really nice, and sometimes even looks complicated. But they do a great job of that. So that's where it starts. I have an idea, throw a sentence together or two, and then send it to them. They will get it back. You can review it. You get like 5 days, and you can make some changes. And then it would go to the, also too, and that at some point, you know, maybe down the line, they look at, you know, what the cost will be, which is pretty important. You know, a lot of bills can get, I've learned quickly that it's easy to get a bill in, and, you know, but when there's a cost to it, it's pretty difficult to get it passed. So, so the reviser's office prepares it. Then the next point is really the bill goes up to the clerk's office, and they basically look for who does this bill impact? You know, is it education? Is it labor? Is it agriculture? Is it a voter law? And they will assign it to a committee. And there are like 16 committees that these can go to. And again, criminal justice, environmental committees. So that's done by the clerk, recommends it, I believe, to the Senate president and the House Speaker. Most of the time, it's pretty straightforward. So that gets approved quickly on our calendar, pretty much what they call under the hammer. There's usually not much debate on that. Once in a while, they get it wrong. And, you know, like I had an education one, it went to the Education Committee. You probably have heard of LD 993. And that went to Education Committee, but then we sent it over to the Labor, or it could be the vice versa. But anyway, so that can happen occasionally, and it's usually pretty straightforward, but it's important to get it in the correct committee. Once it's referenced to the committee, that's where really, in my mind, the real work starts taking place. We will, the chair and the leadership in the House and Senate will help, and the legislative staff will schedule, you know, put it on the calendar, start having public hearings, or, you know, it's assigned a number, and they'll again have public hearings. And that's where it gets important for people like yourself and our constituents to reach out, to the representatives, senators, and attend those meetings. And I'm always happy when somebody contacts me and expresses their view one way or another. And there's been bills that I've thought, well, this is really a great bill. And as I've listened to people and talked to people, I've changed my view on it. So it's really important to hear from people, and not over social media generally, right? So the committee will, again, takes a lot of time to listen, have the public hearing. After the public hearing, I'm on transportation committee, by the way, and we had close to 100 bills this last session, and over Zoom too. So it's been difficult, but there's been some positives too. Once we hear it in our committee, we will, we'll listen to about, maybe 8-10 bills during the day, and then maybe another day later in the week. And then we will schedule what we call a work session. Some of you have probably been to those. And you have very little input at that point, only if you're asked to clarify something. So the public hearing is where you have most of your say, and personally speaking with your representatives. So we have a work session. There's no doubt that in between that, people are talking and trying to get clarification on the bills. Maybe like, again, on transportation, I might reach out to Bruce Van Note, the commissioner of the DOT, and ask him for some clarification. Maybe we're looking at money to see how much the impact is and things like that. And we'll schedule that work session. We debate it amongst ourselves, and we take our vote at the end of the work session. Occasionally it gets tabled for more information, but generally we get a vote that day. And there's three different options, so to speak, I would say. When we vote, if we vote it unanimously, one way or another, either approve it or not approve it, then it's likely it'll go to the House and the Senate over the next few weeks. And there's very little, if any, debate once because you feel confident that the committee has flushed out all the details of it. And so it's very unlikely that much changes if it was unanimous in a committee, one way or another. And I'm not saying that couldn't be brought up, but it's very rare. In fact, if a committee, there's usually 13 members on it, and it's divided proportionally by the members of the House, by the party. So if there's more Democrats, then the committees have a few more Democrats on it as well. So the reports could come out 12-1 or 11-2. Even those, when they go for vote on the floor with the 151 of the House reps and the 35 senators, there's usually little debate when it's that strong one way or another. And any questions at this point on that? Any of that? Okay, and so those are kind of the easy ones, I'm on a committee, again, transportation, we name a bridge over, a fallen soldier or a police officer who's, died in the line, from something, and we name roads and things like that at times. So those are pretty straightforward. We had a bill that dealt with license plates. Some of you may have heard of that one, to profanity on license plates. That came out of our committee with what we call a divided report. I don't remember the vote, but it might have been, let's say 8-5. It could have been 7-6. So, and I will say, it's unfortunate in my mind that many of these come out of committee when they're divided along party lines. But it happens more often than not, and especially in some of the more controversial committees, the Labor Committee, and I think sometimes the Education Committee, they come out just when they're divided and controversial, they seem to be party line votes. But that's not always the case. And if it's divided like that, it's, it goes up to the House or to the Senate. Well, I should say, like if I sponsored a bill, it would go to the House first. If Senator Seaway sponsored a bill, it would go to the Senate first for them to vote on it. And that's where these bills that are divided, you will generally hear quite a bit of discussion on the floor and debate on it. And some of those go party line as well, but not in all cases. So the divided report ones, and again, even up to that point, it's really healthy for people to be reaching out to their legislators and senators. And I generally, to be honest, I voted one way in a committee, or I actually co-sponsored a bill that I voted against later on. So new information came out that it was already in law someplace, I believe that bill was, and I voted against it. Some people get really like, how can you do that? Why would you? And I think it proves that we have an open mind and we're not afraid to change our view on something and vote differently than we originally intend to. And even on these divided reports, again, it's good debate. I generally will not make a decision, and I think that's most cases that I'll wait and listen to all the debate. And there have been times when I might have a thought to go with the committee vote, but hear something on the House floor that convinces me otherwise. It's also important, I think, as a rep, that I don't, just like in your jobs, you don't just wait until the meeting necessarily, you do a lot of background work. So I may contact some, again, departments or other state reps or senators who have opposing views and speak to them on why or why not they're supporting it. And I believe that goes on. That doesn't make the news, only the big, hot, controversial things make the news. So, and again, back to the committee stuff, that I don't, again, have the numbers, but most of these bills, so many of them go unanimously. So there are a lot of bills that just we agree on, both sides agree on, and it makes sense. But the ones that we don't, we hash it out, debate, and we can do it respectfully. I think there's a lot of times that gets missed, I think. So again, it goes to the House and the Senate. Then it kind of goes back and forth. I won't get into that detail. A lot of it is formality. If it got one of these divided reports got voted to accept the report, basically from, say, transportation, we would pass it, say, ought to pass. We want to pass, say, that vanity plate bill. It would get up to the House, and if it passed as an ought to pass, it would go to the Senate. If they approve it, it comes back to us. Usually when it comes back, it's pretty much a formality. There wouldn't be much debate at that time. You've hashed it out. Hopefully, most people, they're not going to change their mind at that point. So it would come again, and it would be called an enactment. From there, it would go to the governor's office, where she will either sign it into law or not sign it. If she doesn't sign it, it takes effect so many days afterwards without her signature, or she could veto it. And we know if there's a veto within 10 days, I believe, we will have another vote on it, and we would need 2/3 to override the veto. So And then, right, it's 90 days after the end of the session that these go into effect in most cases. All right, any questions? I want to mention one thing too, though. This here, let's see. Oh, that's kind of, I think it's got that, excuse me. So I got this book. I don't know, can you see that or? Anyway, it's a book by Justin Chinette, put this book out. And it's great for schools. I think I donated one to one of the area schools. So the great whoopie pie debate, right? So these, and it explains in here basically what I said, but in a, very simplified version, which is probably even better. And he has Justin Chinette also put a workbook out. So it's great. And a lot of teachers are using these in the schools. So just wanted to put a plug in for Justin Chinette and his book. It can be purchased on Amazon. I get nothing from it. So let's see. Any, go ahead, any questions, anything at all?
Let me open it up for questions, Representative White. Just a couple of things while people are thinking of questions, I'll ask one. When you get input from constituents or from someone outside of your district, are you talking to them personally? Are you receiving letters, both? And which provides more information to you to help guide a decision? Because I know a lot of times an email or a written letter is hard to describe all of the impact. Do you take phone calls? Do most representatives take phone calls? And is that part of the process as well?
Yeah, great question. We do get a lot of emails, and I think you're right. It's hard to read it. What do they really mean? And you might assume something. I always personally, and I think most do. Some aren't as good with email. I mean, I'm sure it's just like that with staff in schools, right? I always try to respond immediately and tell somebody I understand what you're talking about. I've researched this already, but I will give people my number, and I think always a personal conversation is best. I don't know if everybody feels that way, but I do think it's important. But email certainly works. So I'm not sure if that answered that, but it's important.
No, thank you.
I was going to say too, one other thing though, like the bills that I sponsored, for instance, that I think a lot of times we'll sponsor a bill at the request of somebody too, right? Either a constituent or a department. Like I sponsored a bill that the Credit Union League asked me to sponsor, and it was to create an electronic titling work group. I think originally we wanted to do more of that. And that was a pretty easy one, but we do, get a request like that, and they work with the motor vehicle department. But I might get a request from a constituent and I'm like, I'm not really excited about this, but I'm representing you. If you want me to move forward, I will. I would tell somebody straight out though that I'm not excited. I don't think it's a great idea, but I don't know that I have the that I can just say no, go somewhere else. So, but we put those in. I haven't had to do that, and I think they clearly know. You put it in. You say at the request of a constituent. And sometimes that they can read that somewhere along the line. But there are many great bills that constituents talk to us about. And at some point, just again, if I get a bill and it comes out of the office at a certain point before it gets too far in the process, I will contact other legislators and, hey, would you consider supporting this bill? And we get co-sponsors. Sometimes that does help for it to pass. And I try to get people, I don't just try to get I'm a Democrat. I don't just try to get my party. I try to reach out to people that I know, you know, both sides to co-sponsor. And you will try to get people in the committees and to sponsor with you, because then it's more likely to pass. And I will say there are, you know, bills that you're like, oh, this is a great idea. But then you realize there are these unintended consequences that you hadn't thought about and that come up along the path. And it's difficult at times. But I don't think anybody puts in the bill thinking, you know, of some of that things. And I want to create trouble, you know. So, yeah.
Folks have questions. If so, just unmute and you can ask Representative White.
Do you think that helped to give some understanding?
I do.
Anybody
I think so. I mean, I'll do a follow-up question. If there's a bill that, and I'll give an example, in education, what is referred to as the earned paid leave law is really creating problems for school districts, because a lot of school districts staff have a lot of earned leave time already. And the implementation of this law is very difficult in the education field. Not getting into specifics about that law, but that is an example. How does a constituent, how does a business manager, how does someone approach a representative and say, I need to share information about this law that's already been passed. It has, in someone's opinion, unintended consequences. How do you approach a representative and say, hey, can I talk to you about this?
Yeah, that's difficult to probably change some of those. I would certainly admit that. But I same process, you could contact the person, you know, somebody contact the area rep, have other people do that. The rep can then contact, you know, a department to get more clarification and maybe fix those things, you know, if it's bad enough. But it is certainly difficult process, I would say. I haven't seen it that many times, but that's where the unintended consequences come in. But I think there is an openness to try to address those concerns. And so it really is just, you know, looping back with the legislators or the department commissioners, you know, they're not just for, as you know, I mean, they're not those commissioners for the citizens. They aren't just for legislators to contact. In fact, I very, very rarely do myself. So I know that's kind of vague again, but it is difficult, but I think it's just important to contact your representative, your state rep, your state senator, both, you know, and then sometimes maybe the governor's office in those cases.
Anyone else before we let Representative White leave? Are there other questions or comments that people want to provide?
I would like to say that representing Waterville, I find Bruce very accessible to the residents of Waterville. I haven't seen anybody as accessible and around and available as you have made yourself. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the manner in which you try to educate yourself on all matters. So kudos to you, Bruce. I'm very appreciative.
Well, I work hard at it. I think one of my biggest roles, honestly, is being a resource for people. And I've said before, doesn't matter if it's, you know, what position they hold, if they have a 3, you know, figure salary or, you know, whatever, 6 figures or no income, I will treat them the same. And I think for the most case, our representatives try to do that. And I reply back to any email. And I think a big part of it too, thank you to Andrew, is I just try to support the community, support our schools and educators, support events, the businesses and things like that. We don't have to agree on every vote that I take, but you know, get out there as a legislator and be visible. I don't like to just show up at campaign time. I want to be there year round. So I've made it a priority. And thank you very much for your kind words.
Thank you,
So
Representative, for your
yeah,
time
just-
today. We really appreciate it.
Again, I guess if I can stress, just don't be afraid to send in testimony to public hearings. I do think with Zoom, it was great. But I will say, as a sitting in a committee and saying, oh, well, prior to, you know, COVID, we had more letters sent in. You know, we could have on a bill, maybe 20 letters sent in, say, or 10. But it means, as you know, somebody being able to present it in person or even via Zoom visually, I believe has more impact, and it's going to be listened to, because unfortunately most reps are working another job. They have families, they're going to booster club meetings, and they're going to, you know, their kids' games and whatever else, probably working 2 jobs, right? So they're busy. And if you're getting 20 letters in support or against a bill, I'm not so sure they're reading every one of them. But when you're sitting there in front of us in a committee meeting, we should be hearing you loud and clear. So that's important. If I could leave.
Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Time, that was very helpful.
I appreciate it. Bye now.
You have a good
Anytime.
day.
You bet.
Representative White was our last presenter for today. Hopefully you found today interesting. Hopefully each of the topics hit something for you and there was some ability to take away something from today. And you found it worth your while. Please let us know whether any of these topics you felt hit anything on Esea, whether you feel we need more training on that and getting into the weeds more, and what other topics would you like presented at future meetings. So please reach out to us. You can certainly reach out. Lucy just put it in the chat at MeASBO@gmail.com. That's the easiest place to put stuff. On the website, we have listed February 11th and April 8th as our 2 spring meetings. If there are other topics and things that come up in the interim, we certainly will hold a meeting and do some development on that and some education on that if there are critical things that come up during that time between now and then. But certainly February 11th and April 8th. Don't know whether they'll be in person, whether they'll be by Zoom, how they'll be conducted. But as we get closer to that time, we certainly will share that with you. Always check out the website and don't be afraid to reach out to us. Is there anything else before we close today? I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving, a good holiday season, the best to you and your families. Hopefully everyone stays healthy and safe, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you for today.
You as well,
You have a
Colin.
great day.